Hey guys, I promised you something. I promised you something, and I've been struggling with something, and I've been reading and reading and reading on this subject in the scripture, and I found something that I think is going to help my situation and everyone else's. I'm going to read this. Um, this is cool. This is cool. Get your pen and paper. You know what I mean? This is First Corinthians 7. So we're going to start with that. And this is something I've been struggling with, and this helps a little bit um, with everything that's been going on in my life with my relationship. And it really, it popped, it opened it, when I was in the hospital, and kaboom. So, so check this out. So I'm going to read, so you're going to see the top of my baldness. Give me a minute. It's talking about concentrating in marriage law and stuff like that, but there's a lot to it, and it's really kind of neat. Part of it is kind of off-putting. In the beginning, I'm going to read that, and you take what you want from it, and maybe I'll do some explanations. I got the Good Study Bible here, so check it out. Concentrating marriage life. Now for the matters you wrote about, it is good for a man not to. So this is interesting. This is not a man, but probably the as a whole. Says, now for the marriage you wrote about, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman. Okay, it's good to sustain that stuff, to refrain from that stuff. So, but since sexual immorality is occurring, the flesh is tough. You know what I mean? We're in this world that's a tough world, and so this is what the decrees. All right, so sexual immorality is occurring. Each man should have sexual relations with his or her own wife, or each woman with his or her own husband. So it's saying it's kind of. I'll read on. So with her husband. So um, so the husband should fulfill his marital duties to his wife, and vice versa, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. And in that same way, in that same respect, I want to emphasize this, the husband also does not have authority over his own body, but yields to his wife. So there's that connection there. Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. So you're kind of, it goes on, and you're going to like this. You're kind of split between God, your God living this, and your wife or husband, because God knows that it's a matter of the flesh, and it's so he realizes that is so difficult to overcome when you're there's a lot to this. There's a lot to this because I see things like when you go down a little further, it talks about it's priestly more than the husband and wife, and it talks about how the flesh is so strong in that situation that he's willing to okay, if you can't just worship Christ, if that's too potent for you, you take on a wife. This is great. I mean, this contradicts the church, the Catholic Church, with the priest not having anything, and all of that. So read on. We're going to read on. There's more than just husband and wife here. There's this thing as a whole is just mind blowing. So check it. In the same way, the husband has authority over it, is it right? He goes, do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Then come together again, so that Satan come together again after prayer, after helping, learning your Christ and things like that. So it says that then after prayer, so Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self control. It's saying it. Yes, sexualness is very strong in the flesh. So they say, so I say this as a concession, but not a command. Not a command, it's a concession for him, that I wish that all of you were as I am, which he's single, Paul is single, But each of you has your own gift from God, and I love this. I love this. You have your own. Everyone had, like I say all the time, everyone has a gift from God, and it goes on to say, you still have to do your path. You still have to live your righteousness and gift that God instilled in you. So even though, so check it. Ready? So you each have a gift from God, and then it says one has this gift, another has that. So one has a gift, another has that, and like I say, it came right to me. And I've said this before, and it's coming. Why is that blurry? This thing is poopy. Oh, there we go. I've said this before that in my own way, like not everybody knows everything. Not everybody's stupid. Not everybody knows everything unless they learn it, unless they want to, or unless that gift is given to them. And I agree. I agree strongly. So now that the unmarried and the widow, I say, it is good for them to stay unmarried, as I do. But if they cannot control themselves, they should marry. For it is better to marry than to burn with passion. And this one says it's better to marry than to burn with passion. I like the King James Version. I can read that to you as well, which is really cool because it says it's ready. It doesn't say with passion in the King James Version. It says burn. And they're interpreting it as a yearning, as a burning for passion, because then they put it in like the new standard. But what if it's like, it is better continuing yourself, and he's talking about Satan and talking about controlling that urge with others, and everybody is supposed to having that one. It's almost it's interesting because he's saying that it's almost just not love, but a necessity. It's almost a necessity to do that for the flesh. I give you that. That. So it is good to stay unmarried, but if you cannot control themselves, you can control themselves to burn. I think maybe it's burn in hell. Maybe it's not burn with passion. Maybe it's burn. Just another one of those scary moments. So I'm gonna read on. I really hope you like this. This one I dig. And I told you that I hope you'll watch these to the end. They are really interesting. To the married, I give this command, not I, but the Lord. So this time in the first part, he says, "Oh, this isn't a command. It's a decree for me." This part is to the married. I give this command, not I, but the Lord. So he's talking. A wife must not separate from her husband, and this is the one that I've been struggling with, and this is the one that's going to bring me back to everything I need. So it says a wife must not separate from her husband, but if she does, she must remain unmarried or else reconcile with her husband or to her husband. So I'm saying it happens, and divorce happens, and it's all right, and that's why I got separated but not divorced. And a husband must not divorce his wife, which I did not do. And to the rest I say this, I, not the Lord. If any brother has a wife who is not a believer and she is willing to live with him, not anybody who has a brother and the wife is going to go live with the brother. Any brother, and Paul says this all the time, brothers and sisters, and that's what he's talking about. Any brother is willing to, any brother has a wife and is not able to be, is not a believer, she is willing to live with him. He must not divorce her. And if a woman has a husband who is not a believer, vice versa, and he is willing to live with her, she must not divorce him. So they're saying, if one of you is a believer and the other is not, that you're strong enough in God, you can convert them and you can get them to realize, which is really cool. Let me read on. So for the unbelieving husband has been sanctified through his wife, and the unbelieving wife has been sanctified through the believing husband. Otherwise, your children would be unclean, but as it is, they are holy. So because you're married and one of you, they're going to be, your children come out holy as in Abraham and his descendants. It's the same concept. There's so much in this little thing. Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. They're holy. But if the unbeliever leave, let it be so. let it be so. It happens, you know. And if the unbeliever believes the brother or the sister is not bound in such circumstances, so you're not bound if you leave. You're not bound in circumstances. You're not going to burn hell. You're not going to, you know, no wrath. So is not bound in those circumstances. God has called us to live in peace. How do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband, or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? So you don't know. It's got to be through spiritual awakening, maybe, or spiritual, you know, spiritualness, spiritual growth, and doing that in turn helps the other partner. All right, and I want to make a specification. It says husband and wife. It doesn't necessarily mean it's got to be boy and girl. And there's nothing in the Bible about that stuff that I know of, you know. And I think that's just a general term nowadays, and I think that's pretty awesome, you know. So let's get back to this. So concerning change in status, so it says, nevertheless, each person should live as a believer in what situation God has given them. So as a believer in the Lord has assigned to them, you know. So this is a really good one. Nevertheless, each person should live as a believer, whatever situation the Lord has assigned to them. I mean, that is, I'm gonna, you know, you got to mark this one because I think this is one of my favorite lines here. 1 Corinthians 17 says, nevertheless, I'm going to read it one more time. Nevertheless, each person should live as a believer in whatever situation is assigned to them. Regardless of anything, you believe and you live for the Lord, regardless of you marry or you're divorced or you're single or you're whatever. And man, there's so much to this. Would love to do it again. I really hope you guys are watching. Everyone should live as, you know, it doesn't say this person and that. It's everyone. So watch. So, bald head. So it says this. It says as assigned to them, just as God has called them. So every believer should live the way they do, that the Lord assigned to them, just as God has called them. We don't know what that is, but our path is what happens. Regardless of anything, our path is what happens. The Lord assigned it. So that's another way to say, you know, give up the flesh and you know, give your soul to the Lord and give yourself to the Lord, because He's got you anyway. And if you believe, and always says believer, because that stuff won't happen unless you become a believer. That stuff is just there. But what's tough is this next part is how tough for me. If it's in there, I know it's in there. It's I read it. It's really tough for me. It talks about how you'll have such. It'll be very, you know, you marry. It'll be hard. It'll be hard because you split yourself from Him in a way that I'll read. Watch. I'll read. I'm getting there. So it says, this is the rule I lay down for all the churches. See, and then it goes into churches and Christ and stuff. The pastors and priests and so that's what part of this is. Was a man already circumcised when he was called, then he should not become uncircumcised. Do you see this is in here? Which is weird because so contradictive, but not. It's mind-boggling and blowing. It just depends on the differences, but I love this because the man becomes uncircumcised. Was a man uncircumcised when he is called? Then he should not be circumcised. Circumcision is not or nothing. Circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing. Everything in this world is nothing. It's trying to say keeping God's commandments is what counts. Keeping God's commandments is the only thing. Each person should remain in the situation that they were in when God called them. Each person should remain in the situation that they were in when God called them. And I think that means birth. And God called them to birth. And that becomes our situation. He's called us here. Were you a slave when you were called? Don't let it trouble you. Although you can gain your freedom, do not do so. this is a weird one because this says slave, but the King James version says something else, and I don't think they technically mean slave, because when I read the King James version and I went down a little bit, it I mean, maybe because in the times, but I think you can interpret that as definitely something else. So if you were, if you're bound or whatever, to the one who's, to the one who called to faith. Oh, here we go. Um, for the one who was a slave when called to faith in the Lord is the Lord's freed person. So they're saying, like, if you were bound or whatever, and maybe in the day, you become free with the Lord. And then if you were similarly the one who was free when called to Christ's slave, you were bought at a price. Do not become slaves of human beings. So this one's really weird. I don't like the way they interpret it, but see, they're saying I hate this one. I don't like to say it this way. Similarly, the one who is free when called. So they're saying if you're bound, you're free to the Lord, and if you're free, you're Christ's slave, and you're a slave to Christ, and they say that throughout the Bible that you are there's other interpretations. I think way back I was reading some interpretation like that you are I don't read it here, and we're going to go through that. Then you're free here, but your spirit is to the Lord already, and things like that. And if you're slave, you become free to the Lord. So it's a whole vice versa thing. And I think it's maybe let's go on. You were brought into the price, but brothers and sisters, each person as responsible to God should remain in the situation they were in when God called them. It says it 3 times in here. Consecrating and the unmarried. We're almost done with this. I like this one a lot, and I'm going to keep going and go. I'm the Energizer Bunny, but I am getting tired. But I know what now about virgins. Now we're going to talk about virgins. I have no command for the Lord, but I give a judgment as one who, by the Lord's mercy, is trustworthy because of the present crisis. I think that it is good for a man to remain as he is. Are you pledged to a woman? Do not seek to be released. Are you free from such a commitment? Do not look for a wife. But if you do marry, you have not sinned. If you do marry, you have not sinned. And if a virgin marries, she has not sinned. But those who marry will face many troubles in this life, and I want to spare you this. So those that marry will face troubles, and he wants to spare us. That's hard because I'm always saying, oh, I'm cursed and this and that, and it's so hard. It's very difficult. So, but he wants to spare us. So it goes like this. When I mean, brothers and sisters, is that the time is short. For now on those who have wives should live as they do not, and for those who mourn as if they did not, those who are happy as if they were not, those who buy something as if it were not theirs to keep, those who use the things of the world as if not engrossed in them. But for this world is in the present form is passing away. This whole line is amazing. There's another. Remember when we did the time there was a time like the song, a time to think, a time to learn, a time to drink. There is a time for all of that. And then it says in the same respect, in the same manner, yes, do all of that, but don't become locked into that fleshly desires and those things, because it says, I'm going to read it again. I would like you to free from concern. I would love to be free from concern. An unmarried man is concerned for the Lord's affairs, how he can please the Lord, but a married man is concerned about the affairs of his world. This is now can please his, how he can please his wife, and how interests are divided. See, he wants to please his wife. He wants to do good. But it's divided, what I was saying. An unmarried woman or virgin is consecrated about the Lord's affairs. Her aim is to be devoted to the Lord and both the body and the spirit, but a married woman is concentrated about the affairs of the world, how she can please her husband, and I'm saying this for your own good, not to restrict you, but that you may live in a right way in undivided devotion to the Lord. You're always struggling to please your wife, or you're always struggling to please your husband because you're married, and your attention is divided between the Lord and your husband or wife. And it says, if anyone is worried that he might not be acting honorably towards the virgin he is engaged to, and in the passions you are too strong, and he feels he ought to marry, then he should do as he wants. He is not sinning. They should get married. But the man who has settled the matter in his own mind, who is under no compulsion, but has control over his own will, and who has made up his mind not to marry the virgin, this man also does the right thing. So then he who marries the virgin does right, but he who does not marry her does better. They're saying, it's like I said, it's intense. Not being married is better than being married, they're saying, and contradicts a lot of stuff. You got to be married, and blah, 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 blah. They're, the church saying, oh, you got it married, and this and that. So that you don't go. Probably this is the same as what it was saying in here. So that you don't. But it's not. It's not because of what they say. You're married because it's out of necessity, so that you don't stray partially from God and things like that. And it's pretty intense. A woman is bound to her husband as long as he lives, but if the husband dies, she's free to marry again another or anyone she wishes. But a man must, but he must belong to the Lord. So she can't marry again if she's a widow, which must belong to the Lord. In my judgment, she is happier if she stays as she is, and I can think that I too have the Spirit of God. Neat. Soak that in, man. Soak that in. That's huge. This one is huge. I want to go over some of this with what they're saying. Like, let's go to has control over his own will, does the right thing. The man who determines what there is no need for him to marry his fiancée under the circumstances, he has made a good decision too. So as well. Paul may referencing to a man who has control of his passions, as in, yes, he's referencing a man who has control of that stuff. I have no control of that stuff. You know what I mean? So, to stay, you gotta have that wife that fulfills those passions, and you gotta have that husband that fulfills those passions. It sounds like out of necessity, but it's you still have to be devoted, and the Lord is the Lord, and it'd be better not to, because of the Lord. But the Lord understands that it's a fleshly world. So I think I dig that, And then it says, his interests are divided. He cannot give undistracted service to Christ. This is particularly true in the time of persecute. Oh, this is particularly he is intended divided. He cannot give his undistracted service to Christ. That particularly true in the times of persecution. Not acting honorably towards the virgin he is engaged, as a passion is too strong. They should get married in the light of hostility towards believers in Corinth. A man might refrain from marrying his fiancée, but if he then realizes that his or her passions are too strong and the situation must seem unfair, it is perfectly proper for them to be married. Isn't this interesting? So many troubles. Times of suffering and persecution for Christ when being married would mean even greater hardship in taking care of one's family. Interesting. Oh, they're saying in times of persecution, so because of the times and what we're reading, but who knows, right? Present crisis probably is probably a reference to the pressures in the Christian life in the immoral and particularly hostile environment. See, I don't believe that. They're speculating there, and I really think most of this Bible thing says believe in God and the laws and the commandments. You really think they're trying to speculate about what that is here on earth? I think it's we're still trying to get our way there and be caring and loving and things like that. This thing is intense, I'm telling you. 7:22. All right, the Lord's freed person who's been set free from bondage to sin. See, that's what I was trying to get at. It's not or a slave to slave owners or whatever. It's your bondage, your slave to sin, your bondage to sin, and you're free from sin. So and that's kind of that's why I said I like that, and that's why that's what I knew it was. But I couldn't remember. So, and it notes, and is therefore free to serve Christ as his slave. You know, and I've seen that around the Bible where you serve Christ as your, slave to spiritualness and goodness and we're striving towards that. So I think that's really cool. I think that's pretty awesome, and I'm trying to figure that out. Do not deprive each other of sexual fulfillment. Not tempted because of your lack of self-control. The Christian deprived of regular sexual activity and his or her the marriage partner may be tempted by Satan to sexual immorality. See, and I tell you about the church too. It's it's like come on, So that's it. I think that's a big one, huh? That's good for me, and I hope it's good for you because that was a pretty decent long one, and I gotta get back to bed, really. All right. Peace.